So last time I went over a whole lot of FNAF fan games and they were pretty interesting as a whole. There were a lot I liked, some I really didn't, and some of them were FNAF Doom. But after reading a lot of the comments, I've realised I've barely scratched the surface here. There are a lot of fan games I've missed, and trust me, that's for a future part. However, there's a series I think deserves an entire episode, and that's the Dogwatching trilogy. The Dogwatching series is one of the goofiest yet creepiest set of games I've ever played. This series manages to be scary while being uncanny to a level I haven't seen in a while. Currently there's 3 installments with a 4th coming, all created by the developer Draggy. Each game aims to be a demake of a main FNAF game respectively, but with their own twists on gameplay, designs, content, and an original story here as well. I've got a metric ton of stuff to say about each release, so without further ado, let's dive straight into Dogwatching 1. The first, the original, the start of it all. Dogwatching 1 is the FNAF 1 remake, and I think this entry is very flawed but still a good start to the series. Dogwatching 1 is structured like One Night at Flumpty's, where there's only one night of content but with threats and mechanics that keep getting added on each hour to make it more difficult. A lot of the challenge and design comes from the trial and error aspect, which I really like across this entire franchise. In the game's description it says it's best to go in blind to get that feeling of FNAF 1 again, and I think it absolutely nails that. As soon as you load in, you're left on your own. No instructions, no phone call, just a prompt telling you to explore the area before your shift starts. It's best to do so because while most of the pizzeria is the exact same as the original, there are some new additions as well. First off, outside of the office are giant fences which really give off that feeling of keeping something out, which trust me will be very important later. And second, there's this massive fuck-ass hallway on the left which is also very important and will help the player a lot during the nights. On top of all of that, just exploring around allows you to really soak in and appreciate this game's art style. Dogwatching is entirely styled to look like an old Roblox game, and it does that extremely well. A lot of the building has that old stud texture that a lot of these old games loved abusing. All of the animatronics are redesigned to fit this style as well, and they all look so uncanny and weird and disgusting, but in a good way. I think it's mainly the eyes that are the scariest part of each design. They look realistic and they also look like they've been crammed into their skulls forcefully. Another thing I really like about each design is how it manages to be wacky without feeling too stupid. Freddy just looks soulless, like those black spots around the eyes just makes him look like he's dead inside. Bonnie decided he wanted to be dripped out this time with his cat, plus he flattened down his ears just to go with the style. Foxy, unlike the rest, has no eyes, leading to him feeling dead and also like the odd one out, which is what I said until I saw Chica. What the fuck am I looking at? Listen, I really like Chica's design in this game, but you gotta admit the head shape is completely impractical. How in the hell is she meant to see with her eyes facing outwards while having that long ass beak at the front? But seriously, all jokes aside, that sense of what am I looking at is what makes this franchise so scary to me, and it only gets better with each entry. Another bonus is that all of these games happen in real time, so not only are these freakish designs freaky, seeing them run at you and try and kill you is way scarier than it should be. And of course the game has some good ass sound design to go along with this. Certain animatronics breathe along with having really loud footsteps. Freddy makes a really eerie and creepy sound every time he moves, and just listen to that poster. But what about that gameplay? We got a very stylish and creepy take on horror, but is the game actually fun to play? I think it's unique, but just not executed the best. This is another one of those games that tries to mix free roam with normal FNAF gameplay, which I generally think just doesn't work as a concept. Except in this game it's really weird because you're meant to free roam but you're also not, but you can, but you shouldn't, but you should. Okay, let me explain. You have the main office where you're gonna be for a majority of the night. Inside is what you'd expect. You have doors and door lights which are pretty much useless because the flashlight is a lot better. Along with the flashlight, we also have the sprint and cameras, but these are all equipped using the toolbox, which is actually something I don't like. You have to manually equip a tool to use it, including the sprint, and if it's the flashlight, you have to click again to turn it on. I know why it was done. It mirrors the controls from a lot of these older games, but I just prefer using regular the regular keybinds. Okay, so like I said before, a lot of the game is based around trial and error, which is really cool. The only hints you get are on a piece of paper with the most vague help of all time. It tells you the basic gist of each animatronic, but to really understand how they behave, you just have to keep playing the game, which again, I really like. Bonnie and Chica are the most standard. In fact, I think they act exactly like they did in the original. They're on a set path to the office, and when they get nearby, closing the doors is enough to make them go away. One thing to mention though is if they detect you outside of the office, it's a wrap. Chica at least is kind of avoidable, but Bonnie becomes Sonic the Hedgehog when he sees you, it's over. Remember the fences I mentioned from earlier? This is where they become super useful because you can use them to jiggle peek and see if an animatronic is in the hallway. Foxy and Freddy are completely different from how they were in the original, and they completely spin the game on its head. Foxy is a blind bullet train that occasionally leaves his cove and sprints on, I think, a set path around the pizzeria. He slams headfirst into the doors, taking their power and disabling them, so if you have them closed while something else is there, that's probably game over. The best method for dealing with him is opening the doors and letting him sprint past you while you hide in a corner. And then we get to Freddy, who's even weirder and more annoying. He's basically on perma-stalking mode and always knows where you are, so no matter if you're in the office or another part of the map, he will be there. Another annoying thing is that the doors don't affect him at all, so a lot of the time he'll conveniently place himself inside of a doorway that you need to get in or out of. Freddy is the fucking problem and what drags the first game down for me. Sound familiar? I get him in concept. He's meant to be the character that forces you in or out of the office, and since he moves in bursts, the idea is to make him follow you away until he stops moving. Problem is, everything else is still just as active, so if you're slightly unlucky, then it's wraps. You can't leave the office for too long or there's a very high chance something else will attack you, and even if you outrun them, there's no guarantee you'll be able to get back into the office in time. Again, in concept, I get what you're meant to do. Doesn't mean I'm gonna like it. Another thing I really don't like is how underused the cameras are. You only really want to use them sparingly and they don't actually do anything. Most of the time you're just focused on moving, and even if you weren't, the cameras don't even slow anything down. They just feel like they're here because they were there in the original and that's it. Then again, I could be missing something because this game is very hard to figure out properly. As a whole, I think this game in particular has very weak gameplay compared to, well, every other game in this series. It really wasn't hitting for me. You guys want to know how I beat the first night? I camped in that big left hallway. It didn't feel rewarding in the slightest. I sat there the whole time and walked around Freddy once until it was 6 AM. On beating the night, you get a funny splash screen, and once back at the menu, you can unlock Nightmare Mode and Extras. Nightmare Mode is what you'd expect. It's more difficult and gets a cool red tint over everything, but if I'm being honest, I couldn't even be bothered to try and beat this. Again, I don't really like the gameplay in this game compared to the rest, and if it's not fun, I'm not going to force myself to play it just for a video. There's one last thing to talk about, and it's a secret interaction you could unlock by doing something in the main night. If you head backstage at one point and get a crowbar, then head to a secret room, you can encounter this weird black bear. He's a very important character, which I'll talk about when the time comes, but for now he just jump scares you and that's it. While I don't think this game is the greatest, it has really good horror, a great style, and is a pretty decent start to the franchise, and trust me, it's only up from here. I can confidently give this game a scary but not that fun to play out of 10. Second time really is the charm. I think this game is a giant step up from the first, but of course still has its own set of flaws. Dogwatching 2 is the FNAF 2D make, and it takes a whole lot of elements from the original, but of course adds a ton of unique spins. First off, of course we got the new toy animatronics, now called the Avengers, and they're just as unsettling as the ones from Dogwatching 1. Chica forgot how to brush her teeth and also how to close her mouth. I can't even call her fine shit anymore. Bonnie adopted the Anthony Mackie stare. This is the most warped and odd design out of the bunch, but I still really like it. Balloon Boy, now called Ballon Boy, actually manages to be creepy with the open mouth and once again the eyes. He's one of the animatronics that look too happy. The fuck are you smiling about? And finally there's Freddy, who isn't even scary, he's just cute, which actually has lore behind it, which I'll touch on later. Just like the last game, you are thrown in instantly, no phone call or guide, just a lone piece of paper in the new office. This time the warnings are a tiny bit more detailed, showing who and what is deterred by the mask and who isn't. However, trial and error is still where the difficulty comes from. But you wanna know what makes this game so much better than the first? They got rid of the free roaming element. You can still move around as much as you want, but you never really want to leave the office, leading to the mechanics feeling more fleshed out and creative. This game does a great job of mixing in movement and the normal FNAF elements into one by making you play the most evil tower defense game of all time. You see this box in the office? Inside is the puppet, and he only starts to leave the box if you leave the office for too long, which again you never really have to do. Returning is the flashlight and camera, still with the same controls, which you guys know I don't really like that much. Of course the mask is here as well, and it works like you'd expect, except now the toxic meter has been implemented. This is to stop you from keeping it on the entire night, as 90% of the things are completely stopped by it. Sadly, once again the cameras are completely useless, they don't slow anything, and you're going to be moving around way too much to even consider using it. As usual, Bonnie and Chica are the most normal animatronics. They gain sight of you and then magically gain memory loss as soon as you put on the mask. One thing I really like is that they mirror each other in how they behave, which is a theme that keeps going with the rest of the franchise. Bonnie is extremely fast when he detects you, while Chica is extremely slow in more ways than one. Both have unique sound cues which can be used to identify them, and of course they're scarier than they need to be. Chica lets out some type of primal roar, and Bonnie gets a horror chase sting. Ballon Boy is more of a nuisance than he was in the original. If he gets near you and the mask isn't on, he straight up steals it, leaving you open to pretty much everyone. On top of that, he decides to laugh loud as hell, which isn't the best when sound cues are very essential to survive. I can really see why that piece of paper said don't let this rat get close. Of course, we can't forget Foxy, who's always the wild card. He somehow forgot he was blind, and now he randomly rushes down the hall and you need to repeatedly flash him to send him back. My only issue with Foxy is he becomes very predictable after a while. He only runs down the middle, so you can just pre-fire him and never have to worry. However, I do think he is the best sounding in the game. He starts his attack with a loud screech, and then he makes sure the entire country can hear him run. And lastly, there's Freddy, who just wanders around aimlessly without a single thought in his head. Combine all of these threats and you get a formula that's much more fun than the first, but also much easier. I'll be honest, this night is a complete cakewalk. No one except Bonnie is that aggressive, and everyone else is really easy to deal with. Once the night is complete, you're free to leave, but if you explore a little more, you can find a strange arcade machine. If you walk directly into it, you're teleported to a strange empty area with a rabbit in the distance. If you walk up to it, the lighting shifts, and then this happens.
Hello player, I have been watching you for a while now. You've been down here Twilight, yes? I am in the public poison. I have come to seal him away once more, and Twilight having the capability to enter the physical plane is detrimental to all living forms of life. Hopefully you have not been influenced by him yet, and with his little pawn currently. If you were to help, we could save all under Twilight's scandal and banish him back into oblivion. I hope you choose the correct side. I will send you back now. See you soon, player.
This right here is the hero of the story, Horizon, largely inspired by Shadow Bonnie, as she's the counterpart to this other character, Twilight. Remember the funny bear at the end of the first game? That right there is Twilight, and he's the main series villain. Twilight is a demonic, unemployed entity that wants to bring himself into the physical plane by using the power of children's souls. He also has the power to control and influence things, which is the reason why all of the animatronics are evil and want to slime you. On top of that, he can also control humans, which is how he's getting the children's souls, but that is expanded on later, so I'll wait until we get there. Horizon is the exact opposite, trying to stop Twilight and banish them completely, and she needs the player to help them do it. And that finally brings us to Toy Freddy, who's just immune to Twilight's BS for some reason. He's also on our side, which is amazing, but I have no clue how. After this little encounter, we're sent back to the main menu, and little side note, this does not count as a night clear, so you'll still have to do the first night again after this cutscene, which happened to me and it made me want to kill myself, but the night is easy, so you'll be fine. However, since this is Dogwatching 2, you have 2 nights, and after you beat the first, it's time for the second. Night 2 is more of the same, except the wizards are introduced. But only Chica showed up for me, so yeah, that's that. Chica enters the office like the rest and is fooled by the mask, and just like the toy counterpart, she moves very slowly. The design is very similar to the original Withered Chica, but in my opinion this one's creepier because again the eyes, ugh. The rest of the wizards just forgot to spawn, and I suspect that's because Night 2 got nerfed in some way. I can at least talk about their designs, and like with Chica, they all follow the same pattern as the original wizards. Freddy is just more decayed, Bonnie lost the face but not the drip, I respect character, and Foxy is just like Freddy, is rustier and older. Overall, Night 2, while more challenging, doesn't bring anything that crazy to the table. It's just more Night 1 but slightly harder with more aggressive animatronics. It's just a shame post-nerf you don't get to see anything new. I stand corrected. Okay, so have you guys ever heard of the fan game FNAF Juniors? And if you have, remember the final boss? You're chilling and then every animatronic gets dismantled and fused into Mangle. Well, the same thing happens here. Around halfway through the night, every other animatronic vanishes and you're left with rock music and no clue what's about to come get you. Mangle in this game is a fucking beast. It's massive and literally gallops around like a horse with the loudest and most imposing sound effects ever made. The rest of the night becomes a one-on-one versus this monstrosity, and it attacks you in two ways that you need to keep track of on the fly. First is flashlight mode. Mangle becomes an enhanced Foxy that charges at you and you need to spam the flashlight in her face. Unlike normal Foxy, she can come from any hallway, which makes pre-firing basically impossible. You need to actually rely on audio cues and the light in her eyes. Second is a fuck you mode, where the flashlight becomes useless and you need to put on the mask to stop her from jump scaring you. During this time, Mangle is literally inside you. It's so scary trying to walk away with her constantly in your face. Imagine how bad her breath is. Beating this night took me about 5 tries. Mangle is fast and aggressive, and on top of that the lights go out at 5, making her even harder to trap. Sometimes she changes how she attacks right inside of the office as well, which is pretty hard to adjust to and got me a few times. Overall, the second half of this night is a pretty great surprise boss fight that's both difficult and terrifying at the same time. They really nailed that unsettling feeling of Mangle, and managing to make her require both mechanics to fend off is really great game design. And we're still not done with Dogwatching 2. Beating the second night unlocks 3 special modes, which I'm not going to complete in full because this video has already taken too long to release. Nightmare mode is where the game starts to get really hard. As soon as you load in, you can tell something isn't quite right. Everything has shifted colour, making the environment look dreamy and unnatural, and really makes you think, why the hell am I still here? Mechanically, everything is the same, but all of the mechanics are a million times more aggressive, with a plus: the wizards actually show up. Okay, well, Bonnie still didn't show up for me, so I have no clue what he does, but Freddy's back with his same stalking nonsense as in the first game. This time he's a lot less annoying, but still as annoying. The best strategy to deal with him is to play Ring Around the Rosies using the music box as cover. So now during the night you need to actively DVD loop Freddy and still be aware enough to deal with everything else, which is incredibly chaotic. Nightmare mode is genuine insanity, which I can't beat as of now, but getting past it does unlock the real ending of this game, so we're gonna consult our good friend YouTube for that. Beating the night unlocks a creepy ass ending screen featuring Geek Twilight and a long ass message that boils down to "You're stupid, I'm strong and cool and evil." Immediately after the text passes, we're thrown into the POV of an animatronic. However, this one looks much darker than the normal ones. In front of us are a bunch of kids happily enjoying a birthday party, but you guys know what franchise this is and you can probably guess what's about to happen. Repeated constantly are a bunch of hallucinations saying things like "bring me forth" and "you know what to do," which is this game's way of telling us that Twilight is manipulating whoever's inside this suit. Eventually the manipulatee shuts the door, and if you walk towards the children, this happens. The new objective is to put the kids' bodies into the animatronics one by one, and while there's no animation, you can see and hear the horror quite well. Once inside, the eyes start bleeding and the tracks resemble tears, which really hammers down that feeling of sadness and tragedy with this event. Once you stuff all of them into their respective suits, your task is done and you can leave, but not without one last message, of course. Here in this very unsettling art piece, you can see this new character, Revenant, and he's this series' serial murderer that isn't in full control of himself. Around him you can see messages from Twilight, some of which equate to the worst therapy of all time. One message I want to highlight is this one here. Twilight is talking about the Shadow Freddy suit we just used, plus the murder of all of these kids finally gave him the power to become a physical being. He now possesses the Shadow Freddy suit, which is pretty bad, but for now we don't exactly know what his goals are. That's for a later time. As a whole, this flashback sequence was some of the most creative storytelling I've ever seen. Being able to actually play through the missing kids incident is something I wish more fan games did. Anyways, we've still got 2 more modes to talk about. Blackout mode is just nightmare mode on crack and 100 times harder. Everything's angrier, the environment's darker, a Hat in Time music is playing, and I'm pretty sure there's 2 Mangles at one point. And lastly, there's Tartarus, which is this game on something. I genuinely can't even describe what's going on this night. You have no mask or cameras, you just kind of exist and move around while weird Freddy's roam and random particles spawning out of nowhere. Like I said, I really cannot explain this mode to you. It's something you gotta really try for yourself. It's a once in a lifetime experience. And that goes for this whole game, honestly. It's fun, difficult, 50 times better than the first, and most importantly, it's still scary while devoting to that old Roblox style. I give Dogwatching 2 an 8 out of 10, but it might as well be a 5 out of 10 compared to Dogwatching 3. Notice how every big franchise seems to cook with their third entry. Sonic 1, 2, Not You 3, DMC 1, 3, Super Mario Bros 1, 2, 3, I could go on and on and on. The Dogwatching series does the same thing. This third game is where stuff starts to get really special. Dogwatching 3 improves on literally every single aspect of the previous games. The quality compared to the last two jumps from here to here. You can see this as soon as you load in. Instead of just teleporting into the pizzeria, there's a mini gameplay segment / cutscene. It's finally time to enact that plan we saw hinted at in the second entry, and to do this we need to enter this strange attraction in the distance. Welcome to Freddyland, the most deep-fried underground facility of all time. Jokes aside, this new art style is clean as hell. It manages to take that worn down feel of FNAF 3 to another level. The highly saturated textures make every single surface look like it survived 15 different fires, bombs and nukes. The effect was pulled off extremely well. Exploring around, you can see several destroyed animatronics, including the toys and the originals. And then we get to the office, which is much smaller and cramped compared to the ones in the previous games. Just like Dogwatching 2, this office is your safe haven. You never really want to leave it because the game is designed very similarly to FNAF 3. The Dogwatching gods heard me and said, "Son, this whole game will revolve around the cameras. Almost every single part of this game requires them in some way." Just like FNAF 3, there's only really one real threat and everything else is just a major hindrance to you but doesn't kill you outright. Let me introduce you all to Salvage. Remember the Shadow Freddy suit that was used in that flashback? Well, Twilight manifested enough power to be able to slowly waddle around in this suit. Just like Springtrap, the design is a mix of machine and weird organism. There's several cuts and open areas in the suit, but instead of there being a rotten zombie with ankle guts underneath, there's teeth and spikes poking out. The sounds this thing makes are very strange too. You would expect loud clangs, but instead he sounds gooey and slimy. It's just it's unnatural. I love it. Salvage makes his way towards the office slowly, which is obviously pretty bad, but don't worry, you have quite a few tools to keep him away. The most important one is the audio lure. Just like Springtrap, you can place a sound in a room to lure Twilight away from the office. One thing I find weird, and I actually just kinda don't like about the audio lure, is the sound it makes. In the original, it was Balloon Boy's kid-like voice that tricks Afton's primal urge to be a murdering bum into happening, but in this game it's just a loud beep. Why in the hell is a demon confused by a loud beep? Anyways, the tactic is to keep him as far away as possible with the lures, but if that fails, you always have the second option, doors. Around the map there are several places you can shut doors in, and these keep Twilight stuck in an area for a while. But how do you close those doors? Holy shit! Over here on this panel is every single door on the map, and to know which one to close you need to check a camera and pay close attention to the signs in the area. Then you need to remember what name was on them and then find them on this panel to shut them. They only close for a limited time and then after they go on a decently long cooldown. While I really like how they work, my only real problem comes from the fact that this game doesn't show how long they're on cooldown for. This goes for the lure and the door in the office as well. Most of the time you're just stuck guessing how long it takes until you can use something again. The doors are very clearly intended to be the last ditch defense to stop Twilight. In fact, in my time playing, I found it was easier just to use the lures 90% of the time. The easiest tactic is to just keep looping him in the top right of the map, mainly in cams 1, 2 and 3, and only really use the doors if absolutely necessary. All that being said, this game seems pretty simple, right? Not even fucking close. Okay, so remember the phantoms from the original? This game says, what if we take them and put them on drugs? As you progress through the night, more and more threats get added on. Once you hear a weird scream, that's how you know something else has spawned. If you pay close attention to the walls in the office, you'll see sketches that serve as tutorials for each threat. You all know the drill by now. The advice is vague as hell and trial and error is the main thing once again. These threats are now called the Revenants, and along with their cool ass nickname, they all have really unique mechanics and designs. This is where that highly saturated look of everything everything really starts to shine. The colouring and effect it gives them makes them look like straight up demons. Revenant Bonnie doesn't look too different from his Dogwatching 1 design, but again the colours make him feel much creepier. He's got a new eye on his stomach and he's always in some type of scared looking pose. This ties into his main mechanic where he'll spawn somewhere on the map, and if you stare at him for too long he'll get mad. He's not too hard to deal with. Worst case scenario, he'll spawn in the room you're looking at, but even then you can still close the office door to get rid of him. If he manages to jump scare you, he disables certain cameras for a bit, which isn't great. Following how they've been for the whole series, Chica is the exact opposite, from her design being so radically different to her mechanics. Occasionally she'll spawn somewhere on the map, including the office if she wants to troll, and you need to shine a light on her for a while until she disappears. Failing to do so will get her mad, and if she reaches the office she disables the laws. As usual, she's got the weirdest design out of the bunch. Now she has 3 heads with a bunch of mouths on her body, and she's completely missing her hands. Smash. Freddy and Foxy are pretty different from Bonnie and Chica. These are both threats you need to deal with using the flashlight rather than the cameras. Foxy spawns on either side of the map, screams incredibly loudly, then proceeds to sprint towards your office at full speed. Getting rid of him is as simple as just shining the light in the general direction he's in. One lumen and this motherfucker gets scared and phases out of existence with one of the coolest sound effects I've ever heard. If you don't get rid of him though, he'll disable the laws for a long time, which is guaranteed to fuck you over. The doors also don't stop him at all, because you know he's Foxy, he has to be strange in some way. Design wise he's not too different, he's way taller and has 2 jaws, but other than that he's the same old Foxy. Freddy also makes his way to the office, but instead of sprinting he's very slow. He can appear on either side, and just like Foxy, the flashlight is his mortal enemy. For him it's recommended to track him on the cameras to know what side he's on, because he's very quiet and takes about 7 seconds to get rid of. Also like Foxy, failing to deal with him disables the laws, which again is very bad. Design wise they zombified the hell out of him. He's got that gamer posture times by 1,000, and if I'm not mistaken he's got his tongue out too. And finally, creepiest of all, we get to our final Revenant, the puppet. Instead of looking cartoony like the rest of them, the puppet opts to have a very humanoid face and stretched out proportions that make him really stick out. Its behaviour is even stranger. Randomly during the night it spawns, only shown to you with a blue outline. Suddenly it starts making the player hallucinate, then it cuts all sound, and this happens. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? So not only can it phase through walls, it also completely disables the cameras, which is by far the biggest punishment out of them all. Getting rid of him is completely unique. Instead of a light or door, you need to use any audio law when the sound cuts out. But alone, the Revenants actually seem pretty easy to deal with, but when everything comes together, it makes me want to cry. After like 2 AM, things start getting really crazy. You need to constantly be on your toes managing every threat. Including salvage, you can really get quite close if you don't babysit him the entire time. One mistake sends you down an endless downfall, and when you're playing for the first time it can really feel overwhelming, but in a good way. Out of all 3, this by far has the strongest gameplay. Being focused on one style allows it to have a lot of depth with the mechanics. The stronger mechanics really make this game feel much more rewarding than the rest as well. Once you get a hang of everything, beating the main night is very fun and challenging. Once you do, you can finally escape the facility, but judging by this message, we seem to have missed something. Once outside, the ground starts shaking, and when you turn back, what you guys just saw was the bad ending, where Twilight manages to gain an immense amount of power and become the Terraria Moonlord. Obviously we can't just let that slide, so it's up to us to find a way to stop it. When I first played this game I was expecting it to have 3 nights because it's Dogwatching 3, but instead we have 2 different endings with unique requirements. Getting the good ending takes quite a bit of problem solving and a whole lot of patience, if I'm being honest. Okay, so upon retrying the night, if you look closely in the office you can see a ripped note on the desk with some instructions on it. It tells us to check the storage room at the start of the night, and if you look around closely inside that room you can see a glowing Bonnie poster. Once you click it, you're teleported into a minigame section with a very cute Bonnie sprite holding a picnic basket. You can move him left and right to pick up fruit, but any FNAF veteran can clearly see that ain't the point of this section. Move far enough right and you'll clip out of bounds, glitching the game and sending you to this new area. This is like the minigame hub world, and if you enter each room there's instructions on how to access the rest of the minigames. Another thing I want to mention about these mini games is minus the lore related glitches, these can just be played as actual games. If you revisit them in the extras, you can just play them as if they were real arcade machines and shoot for the highest score possible and attempt to beat some of the people on the leaderboard. Anyways, Freddy's is the simplest, it has no time requirement and can be done at any point in the night. To start this mini game, you need to lure salvage into camera 8 and then close 5 very specific doors in the same pattern as this image. Once inside, you play FNAF DDR with the objective of getting to 999 points, and of course once that's reached, the game starts tweaking. The next section is probably the most lore heavy area in the game. Here we see one of these souls directly talking to Twilight. It's actually a pretty sad conversation. Of course the poor soul wants to be free, but Twilight needs its power and suffering to become stronger. I like this conversation because at the very least it explains our villain's reasoning for tormenting the souls rather than him just doing it for the love of the game. Near the end of the conversation, Horizon manages to sneak in, abruptly ending the minigame and sending us back to the main night. Up next is Chica's minigame, which is accessed by playing up to 230, then sprinting all the way to cam 3 and clicking all of the cupcakes that spawn in said room. Jesus Christ. Her minigame is exactly like the one at the start of FNAF 6. Launch a bunch of pizzas at people until you encounter a glitchy one and then watch as the game explodes. The glitch segment of this minigame is pretty unique. You have 30 seconds to find your way outside of this maze and into the safety of Horizon's arms. But then we get to Foxy's minigame. Okay, so Foxy's minigame has two very big problems that when combined make this one very frustrating to complete. The first problem is actually getting to the minigame. The requirement is very harsh compared to the others. You need to make it up until 4 AM, then sprint to camp 4 and place lures in 3 specific rooms once inside. Okay, alone that doesn't sound too awful, but then you gotta remember the nights are 12 minutes long. So to even get to 4 AM, that's at least 8 minutes of your time, and if you fail you need to do it all over again, which I can tell you was driving me insane. Then on top of that, you also gotta factor in that you need to play almost perfectly up until this point in the night. Remember how half of the Revenants disable the laws for a long ass time? That alone is gonna stop you from even entering this minigame. So you need to keep track of them, plus salvage, plus the puppet who disables cams, and also make sure you haven't used any of the laws in the specific room by the time 4 AM hits. Doing this took me about 50 minutes, no joke. It was late at night, the UK heat was belting my setup and constantly failing had me tweaking.
Is it 4 AM yet? It's 4 AM. Book it. Fucking book it. And he just detected me.
Are you fucking kidding me? And then there's problem number 2. Once you get to this minigame, there's no guarantee you'll beat it because it's also the most annoying minigame out of them all. The first part has you playing hurdles with the most precise hitboxes ever. You need to jump a millimeter before the obstacle to clear it. Then the glitched part of the minigame will probably kill you on the first attempt. This is the only one with something that can straight up make you reset. Thankfully it's not that hard, just surprising. All you need to do is move around a lot until reaching the safety of Horizon in the middle. But once you've done that, you've officially completed all of the secret mini games. Return to the Bunny Hub world and there's now a mysterious door you can enter. Inside are all of the souls of children and Horizon, and now with all of their power plus the players' help, it's finally time to free them and put a stop to Twilight. We only have one more thing to do before the end, and it's to survive one last night, except the place is slowly being set on fire. Nothing changes mechanically, but it is a cool ass set piece, and once the night is over and you try to leave, this happens. What you just saw was an amalgamation called the Toy Box, who I didn't mention before because it will literally never kill you unless you leave the office. What a banger design though, it's similar to Bolton Freddy except with all of the toy animatronics melted in. Speaking of toy animatronics, Freddy, what a genuine goat, coming in clutch right at the end, absolutely chokeslamming Toy Box out of existence. No, seriously, where did they go? After being captured, the player faints, but it ain't over till it's over because once again Horizon is here to keep us going. Wake up! Wake up! We've almost won. It seems the beast has brought you directly to its heart. Wake up! We finally have to end all this torment. Here, I'll empower you with my essence. Go and banish this blight for good. Free the souls and use the light to erase its fall. You are the only thing stopping this beast from taking over the world. Good luck. Holy mother of toy chica, the last thing I expected from this game is a massive boss fight against the flesh prison from Ultra Kill. Welcome to the grand finale where it's down to us, our trusty flashlight and the power of the souls to finally put an end to Twilight. The fight is actually pretty easy, the only real threat is this amalgamation named Midnight that attacks you the entire time, but you heal pretty quick so you can't really die. Midnight has 3 attacks it will cycle through: a slam, a projectile that leaves goop on the floor, and then a Foxy styled lunge that travels way too far. The objective is to collect different souls to weaken the heart, and when it's vulnerable use the flashlight to bring its health down. You only have to do this 4 times in the fight, and after the final hit the heart explodes and we're back on the hill from the start of the game. This time instead of a demon awakening there's a bunch of fireworks and the place explodes, finally putting an end to Twilight. Well, maybe. The game then cuts to a news report detailing the destruction of Freddyland and the hunt for the killer of the original 5 children that possessed the animatronics. When the broadcast ends you can see the reflection of the red man on screen, and shortly after they turn themselves in for being the killer. After turning himself in, the game ends and we get this nice screen showing that all the children's souls are finally at rest. And with that comes the end of Dogwatching 3, and overall what a great game this is. By far this was the best in the entire franchise, from the visuals to actually having a fully coherent gameplay style to expanding the story and making it way more interesting. Twilight is a cool ass villain, deciding to make a FNAF game with a straight up demon as an antagonist is creative, and it's great to see Shadow Freddy be used more. Same with Horizon, basing her on Shadow Bonnie is really smart considering how much of a mystery the original was. There's a tiny bit of extra content including a custom night which also has original characters implemented in with their own mechanics, which is pretty nice. The extras area is pretty cool too, you can replay all of the mini games and there's a whole lot of lore and developer insights on all of the content. So if I had to rate the franchise I'd give Dogwatching 1 a 5 out of 10, Dogwatching 2 an 8 out of 10 and finally Dogwatching 3 a 9.5 out of 10. The only thing holding this game back was the damn Foxy minigame, getting to that was oh my god. I'm really excited for Dogwatching 4 and an added plus it looks completely different from FNAF 4, which is great because I have big issues with FNAF 4. I hope Dogwatching 4 continues the trend of being better than the last, and I also hope that they keep cooking with the story. Last thing to ask, and this is the biggest mystery of the game for me, why the hell are these called Dogwatching?